Good morning. My name is Bruce Bronster. I'm an attorney. I practice in New York. My firm practices in New Jersey as well. We are tax lien foreclosure attorneys, mortgage foreclosure attorneys, and have a full practice law firm. I'm also president of the National Tax Lien Association, and there are many board members here. And I'm happy to help and speak on this panel and try to inform you. I think that the title is the villainization of the tax lien industry, but I think the more important part is discussing some of the issues that have come up and ways to address them. And I think that many of you have been industry professionals for a long time. Some of this is going to seem very obvious, and others have come from different backgrounds. But I've been doing this for a long time, and some of the things that we've now heard at the National Tax Lien Association have been new to me. So I thought that we would talk. I would moderate a panel, ask some questions, and Brad Westover. Actually, could everyone introduce themselves, please?
Brad Westover, Executive Director of the NTLA.
Tom McOsker, BCMG.
Albert Friedman. I'm a principal at Alternative Tax Asset Group.
So Brad prepared a PowerPoint, and I thought we would kind of go through it, and we're going to talk about the press first, because that's the first area where tax lien is a little bit under attack. So Brad, why don't you tell us?
Well, we titled this segment "The Villainization of the Tax Lien Industry," and I think we'll go through some of the key factors, first starting with the press, the pitfalls, bad actors, and a case study. Some of the press that's come out is very unwarranted and very one-sided and whatnot. But we're also, in fairness to the industry and in fairness to being I think, as forthright as possible, some of the stuff is very warranted. So we'll talk about about some of those acts, some of the bad actors, and some of the acts that warrants some of the bad press, and some of the stuff we need to stop doing as an industry. So the first thing is we'll go into the press. At the NTLA, we receive probably 2 or 3 media requests every single week. We have a method by which a reporter can request information. We don't take every single request that comes through. They fill out a form, and so we kind of want to know, well, what's your angle? What's the story? To get an idea of what they're going to report on. But this is a few of the articles that we defended in the last couple of years. Diane Sawyer had an interview, or Diane Sawyer wanted us to go to her office in New York, or she was going to send a crew down to Florida to interview me or anybody that she could find. And ultimately we declined. Our board opted for, there really was no winning position to the story that she was going to tell, which we caught wind of. So she did an ambush job on one of our members and showed up, at 7 a.m. and caught him walking into their office saying no comment and things like that. And Bruce and I had paid for some media training through the NTLA and are prepared to answer some of these things. But sometimes there's no win situation to the angle in which they want to take. And I think in those situations, it's best that we don't respond. I mean, we responded to Diane Sawyer via an email, and basically the story never really came out. There was also the National Consumer Law Center. Both of them had the same story, which is there's a tax foreclosure crisis coming across America. And we conducted research over the last couple of years, the NTLA, and we found that the articles, or that premonition they had on their story or thesis of it being a foreclosure crisis sweeping America is just not a true story. It never has been. And we get lumped in with a mortgage foreclosure crisis frequently.
That's a great point. We do get lumped into the mortgage foreclosure crisis, and I wanted to ask the panel why. What's the derivation? Why are we lumped in? What's the upside to attacking the tax lien industry? We talk about how great it is for communities and what a good job it does for municipalities and how it pays for police and fire, et cetera. And so I wanted to just throw it out from your perspective, from an investor's perspective, from a trading platform perspective. Why is this happening?
Well, I think you kind of hit it on the head. It's many times the investor, and what you see out there is when people are profiting and there's a loss, like for instance during the mortgage crisis, there was so much focus on the robo-signing and not the fact that somebody signed a personal guarantee or took out a loan. That all became not important, and it was a focus on the big bad banks. So here is somebody generally who has not paid their taxes. They've become a burden to everybody else. There's statute in place that allows the counties or the municipalities to sell their taxes to somebody else, so it doesn't burden everyone else who is paying their taxes. Gives them the time to live undisrupted in their home as they would normally get for statute during that statute period. Ignore the notices and then cry foul. So unfortunately it has to do with the fact, I think, that it's more of the investor base, and somebody profiting is that negative, just a very negative angle to most people.
So from an investor perspective, how are you or other investors in the industry going beyond legislative protections, judicial protections? Like how are you dealing with individual case-by-case basis? Like how are you going beyond?
We do. So we don't look at all of our investments as final. Like we got into the position, we own this house for $2,500, and no matter what the circumstance is, we're going to take title to that home if that opportunity arises. That's not our angle. That's not our business plan. I can tell you, last week alone, we probably had about 4 different workout situations, whether the person was disabled, a veteran, somebody else stepped in and wanted to pay off the home, run into some sort of payment plan, an extension. We will do that, and I think that helps alleviate some of that negativity, and I think people see that. Unfortunately, nobody likes to focus on the story. I think even if you went and handed Diane Sawyer that story, she would completely ignore something like that and just focus on the fact that, but you did still foreclose on 20 other homes.
It's not great news.
Correct.
So Tom, how do you deal in terms of like a trading platform? Are there any safeguards, or do you guys have ethics rules? How do you safeguard, or how are you proactive in helping support the reputation of the industry?
Sure. The answer is yes. There are definitely safeguards. There are rules. There's a vetting process for everyone that gets onto the platform, which is oftentimes a point of contention. People are like, "Why can't I just sign up?" So we do want to know who's on there. We do want to know what they do, who they are. We have had occasion 3 times over the last 5 years to kick off members of the trading platform for activity that is less than stellar, shall we say. But 3 out of over 400 is not that bad, I don't think. And I think that maybe that we should look at that statistic as more telling about the type of people on the institutional level, like Alterna, that that are in this business. And of course there's going to be bad actors in any business, right? And of course the media is going to sensationalize that. And as you said, Diane Sawyer is not going to tell a story about all the great stuff, right? I mean, that doesn't sell. It doesn't put butts in the seat. So we all understand that, and we struggle with that, and that's it's not unique to this industry. But I think that it is important that that we look to each other and our constituents and the other people in the business and hold each other accountable. And we do that in the secondary market. We very much do. We know who's there. We know who's trading. We know what they're doing. And not that we can tell them what to do, but we certainly can make suggestions and guide. And there are safeguards in place. We don't own and foreclose ourselves or anything like that. So that's not really a concern for the secondary market. But we do sell to people that do, right? And so that I suppose in a derivative way, it is important. It's important to know who those people are. But we do. We know.
So Brad, on that.
I was going to say one thing. It's interesting, something you'd never find in the press, and something that doesn't seem normal. But one of the largest investor members of the NTLA sells 50% of their portfolio back to the owner. It's not about just kicking them out and getting the maximum profit. So it's just a story that's never told. And there's a lot of workout solutions that happen within our industry that that goes untold.
The question I was going to ask is, from an industry perspective, what are some of the things that the NTLA does to protect and safeguard, the industry, A, and what advice would you have for servicers, investors, people in the industry when confronted with a really bad situation?
So when we go to like the city of Philadelphia that hadn't sold liens in 20 years, and it was a debacle when they did it because this industry was basically in its infancy and being institutionalized. There was no Bible on how to do this right, and they made a lot of mistakes in the past. So some of the things that we presented to the local government in Philadelphia and continue to do so. Some of the things that get our industry in trouble are the following. There's the pitfalls and then our solution. Number one is low-value liens. They never move the needle financially for any of us, but they cause serious problems when you're selling a $23 water sewer lien and then you're foreclosing on a home for that amount. It's just crazy. It doesn't make any sense for them until it reaches a certain threshold, and we let the local governments decide what that is. But we advise don't sell little liens. Number one. Number two is, in order to combat the for-profit only movement, is to offer payment plans, to offer lien buybacks where the local government can buy back any lien that's purchased for whatever reason. Second of all is to offer a lien swap, whereas then they it's a like-kind lien, a single-family home with X dollars, and they swap out another lien for the following year if there's a hardship case. Third thing is that we don't work with local governments, that we're just very rigid and profit-seeking only entities. And we recommend to local governments they appoint an ombudsman, someone that hears hardship cases and deals with them. We also advise them not to basically to not to select their ombudsman early and go through that process rather than front end everything and exclude everything. Like the knee-jerk reaction in Philadelphia, their first reaction was, you know what, we're going to exclude all owner-occupied homes. All owner-occupied residents that don't pay taxes in Philadelphia, we're just going to carve out that group because we don't want any issues. And I said, you just carved out the highest paying group in any classification you could possibly have. That makes no sense. And so when they got over that hurdle, and then they were super pleased that when they came out with their first deal in 20 years, that over 50% of the people came in and paid before the sale happened. And so they were ecstatic with that. All these people were waiting by the wayside, saying, they have no hammer. They've never done any enforcement in 20 years. Well, the word's on the street in Philadelphia that you didn't have to pay your taxes, and now the tide's changing. The other part is the lack of education. I'm very close to this situation as I run around, as I'm working in North Carolina trying to change legislation to open up some new markets and bring some new liens to the marketplace. Every tax collector in America, in all 50 states, have a form letter for people that don't know what they're doing in this space. And it's crazy. It hurts our industry. When there's companies that run around, I'll just use a blanket term of infomercial companies, when they run around to 6 or 7 or 8 different cities in America every single week, and they proclaim X, which is very different than the NTLA or very different than what we'd hear here. The kind of the things that they say are, government guarantee 16 to 24%, up to 50% interest, government guaranteed, government backed. Every year, $7 to $10 billion of tax lien certificates get sold. Those are inflated numbers, and it leads to problems. And when I said they have a form letter in 50 states, well, there's only 30 states that sell tax liens. So when you go to these states like California that don't sell, and these people go to a seminar, and then suddenly they're harassing their tax collector in California is, how do I buy tax liens? They have to pull out their form letter and email it to them or send it to them, but they just think we're a bunch of buffoons. So that's obviously something we need to combat as an association, as an industry in the whole, is to educate. Everybody needs to step up their level of education. And we have a responsibility, the NTLA, to start teaching across the board, everybody, private sector and public sector, on some of these pitfalls. The last thing I want to say is some of the things that we've been in trouble for is that attorneys, some attorneys' fees have gotten out of hand, and some bidders on some deals like in Ohio have preemptively gone in, and that was just a profit center. They found a little loophole where, wow, we can make this deal work if we have X dollars charged in attorney's fees. And it was kind of outside the letter. Certainly it violated spirit of the law, and so that's been in trouble. So we recommend capping legal fees. So those are some of the things.
You kind of jumped a slide on me.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm still with this slide. You know, some of the things that we do both in New York's securitization program, some of the things that we've recommended to Philadelphia, and some of the programs and ideas that we talk about at the NTLA, which like become our mantra when faced with attacks. You know, we support noticing provisions. We support judicial protections, legislative protections, and some of them include things like minimum tax liens, variable interest rates on the value of the property, exemptions, active military veterans, reduced interest rates, series of notice payment plans. So there are some of the other judicial protections include getting a guardian ad litem appointed if someone is not there or incompetent or disabled, or a temporary administrator if there's not an administrator appointed. And finally, you know, one of the things that I say whenever I argue in court or put into as many motion papers as we possibly can say is the purpose of the tax lien program in the city of New York is to reduce the tax lien rate for those homeowners who actually pay their taxes. So, you know, the program is designed, and all of the programs are designed to collect taxes in a fair and transparent manner to lower the tax rate. It's not designed to hurt people who can't pay their taxes. So I think it's really important we kind of, you know, institutionalize all of these safeguards and protections that we all support. Because if the industry works that way and is immune to attack, you know, we can all do our jobs. So moving ahead, there are some bad actors that kind of operate in the periphery of the industry. And, you know, Brad started to talk about them. And, you know, I'll come back to you, Brad, but Tom and Albert, are there any bad actors in your areas of the world in this industry?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And I think Brad outlined some of those people. I mean, when you got people who you know, buy these very, very small liens in order to really, you know, either apply the legal fees onto them or try to get a foreclosure, ultimately get the property back because that legal fee is so large that it just took a $23 lien and made it into an unrecoverable payable. So you do see that a lot, and unfortunately that taints what we do when we look at it. That's the primary, probably the primary source of the bad actors that we tend to see.
Tom, any in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, just when I thought, you know, we've seen it all in the in the creative strategies bucket, we see another one. We have a unique position that we kind of sit in the middle of everything, so we get to see very transparently. Sometimes we don't want to see that transparently into how and why some of these people do what they do, and by and large, most everybody is very on the up and up and adheres to what all of you preach, which is the encouraging thing. But there is really no end to the creative ways that certain actors in the business will twist things, and I don't know that we can really get rid of that. I don't know that you could legislate that away. I think that's going to be there regardless of the industry. But you know, highlighting it and then taking a collective stance on it and saying, you know, this is how we do things on the better side and the institutional side, I think is very important. But it's an education thing. I think it's an education thing.
So Brad, you know, you started to talk about a particular bad actor, and I want to return to that and maybe go into the case study that we were talking about.
So this is actually a real live situation. Go to the next slide, if you will. So an 80-year-old lady called me from North Carolina a few months back, and she had been to a seminar. She'd paid $30,000 she'd been to 2 seminars. The first one was free. The second one, she ponied up $30,000, which gave her a trip to Las Vegas to open up have an opportunity to buy some liens. But she's 80 years old and she doesn't travel via plane anymore. So she asked because it included a trip to Las Vegas. And so she got some of her money back. I think they gave her $5,000 of her $30,000 back. But they called and said, listen, we've got a wonderful opportunity. Since you can't make it to Las Vegas and buy some of our pre-screened liens, then we would like you to buy the $6,000 a beautiful office condo in the northeast of the United States. It earns 18% interest. And she says, well, if it's so good, why are you selling it to me? And he says, well, I've already made my millions in this space. I'm trying to help others make their millions. So that's what was conveyed to her. And I said, listen, do me a favor, call him back and get the parcel identification number. She called me, it was at 5:30 at night. And I said, I'll call you in the morning once I do some due diligence. So it took me a couple hours. And then I spoke to her in the morning. I said, okay, you ready? Here's the story. Here's the rest of the story that you didn't get, using the Paul Harvey saying. The rest of the story is the building was demolished 3 years previous. Its land value was $0. There was 3 previous lien holders for $49,000, which you'd have to pay off to foreclose on this. You had $8,000 in foreclosure fees. So now your total investment on this property that's worth nothing is $63,000. I mean, you know what? I don't know if the company is all out and out fraudulent or just scamming the public, but this is the kind of thing that keeps me up at night, is I don't want to represent an industry that scams people, and especially the elderly or those that are going to try to liquidate their IRAs to do something that's, and this scenario, there's no government guarantee to anything. It's like buying a lottery ticket, except that one's a loser. You know it's a loser. But going full circle, so what can we do about it? How can we control bad actors? We can educate a lot better than we currently educate, and we can try to get people up the learning curve. Obviously, this group has no understanding whatsoever of Horizon LTVs, and maybe some of you don't. Maybe you don't know what it takes to foreclose. You don't know what lien priority is and some of these things. So, the exciting news of the day from the NTLA's perspective is at our annual conference, we will be introducing something special to combat this type of activity, and to separate out those that really know the business and those posers that don't. And so that's what we're going to do, and I'll introduce that at the annual conference in February.
So we have a couple of canards in the industry, like accusations, lies, and I thought maybe we could talk about some of those that some of the things that people say about us and sort of the response.
Well, going back to the national foreclosure crisis, it's very difficult to get market data. Tax collectors across the country do not want to tell you how good or how bad their tax collections are. It's just, it's the nature of the beast. There's 3,000 local governments in America that collect taxes, and no one had gone back and basically done the research. So it took us a while, because the story that came out from the National Consumer Law Center was one anecdotal story. Same with the Washington Post, a gentleman named Benny Coleman. Benny Coleman, the story was, he was a disabled veteran that lost his home, and he lost his home for a very small dollar amount. But what wasn't told in the story is that he had, I think, 14 different court hearings, 6 of which his whole family was there to represent. He entered into a payment plan. He never made his first payment, and the family kept saying, we're going to pay, we're going to pay. Well, 14 hearings later, the game's over. The charade's over. You didn't do what you said you were going to do. But that was the anecdotal story, of which there's no great comeback to that, except for the fact that they didn't have information. And at the time, we didn't have any foreclosure information to combat it. So And you can't just tell them more. You can't just do research and then say, well, here's the data, because it's kind of a hardened response. I mean, we got to continue to have those safeguards. Say, listen, we believe in protecting the elderly, the disabled veteran, and those hardship cases that need it. But here's the data. The data was that they claimed there was going to be a tsunami of tax foreclosures coming down the pike, and you look at the significant decrease from 2013, 2014, and this is pretty common sense. Our economy started to get better, and people pay their taxes. At the end of the day, you know, our statistics are about 99.9 something rather pay. And you got to deal with the 0.04 or whatever percent that are not paying. But you see this is just Florida data. In 2013, there was 38,000 tax deeds filed or tax foreclosures started. And then in 2014, there was 30,000. So you had 20% less. And then tax deeds sold, there was 8,000 in 2013, 8,600 in 2014 for a 3% reduction. And then you look at actually how many people were displaced, and this isn't really a true number either, because those of you that play in Florida know that just because it was a homestead exemption doesn't mean there was actually people there. You can have a homestead exemption that was filed, the place is boarded up, the lawn's 6 years old, and no one's lived there in ages. But nonetheless, I have no way to determine each one of those, so I just took the real number. How many of those were actually listed as homestead exempted? Was 259 foreclosures in 2013, and then a whopping 58 in 2014. So it was basically a 78% reduction in that number. And then to compare apples to apples in a case study, you look at the mortgage foreclosure crisis, and the numbers are off the charts. So we kind of, it's really nice to actually have some data to back up what we say to be true, which is in a normal scenario, very, very, very few people lose their homes to tax foreclosure. We said it from the start, and now we've got data to substantiate that claim.
So I think we're like kind of pushing up against our time. I would open it up for questions for everyone.
Why do we not have a full-time PR firm working for us? Why? I mean, we sit here and you guys have so much information that absolutely blows out all this negative data, but it's the best kept secret right now. We need to have the public understand, and it's real cheap these days. You can blog, there's the internet, and we should be proactive with this. I mean, we spend most of our time defending claims, which you have to do, but so many people out there don't know the real situation. And I think in the second strategy would be to attack the gurus. I mean, the gurus that are, I'll give you one example. Because we clear titles, we go to places where people are buying tax deeds. And so we will speak solely on how you can clear the title to a tax deed. And I've had situations where these gurus that, as I listen to their scenario, they're talking about, I'm worth 24 million, or I've done 24 million in tax fees and stuff like that, and you know, I just do this because I want to give back to the community, blah blah blah. I remember doing that seminar, and this is when I was doing some work in Louisiana. The next day, I get a call from the head guru. Hey, do you know any way I can get some properties in Louisiana so that I can sell them to our clients? I mean, these are the gurus that know everything, and this is, and they're coming to us to ask if we can find them some properties. So we need to level a salvo right at these people and do it in social media, do it in print, however we can get the word out. And I'm not saying a direct attack, but with a good PR firm, I think the investment is well worth it, because we all know we're doing the right thing. I don't think there's anybody in this room that is doing things sub rosa. So why not make it a public issue as opposed to something that goes no further than issue?
Well, I'll answer that in part, Bob. It's a great question. We did hire a PR firm last year. We engaged the PR firm for about 6 months, and what we found was not a lot of traction about positive stories about the industry because they're not salacious enough. So, you know, we let the PR firm go because we just weren't getting anywhere. And then, you know, I'll turn it over to Brad.
So yeah, we you know, if anybody that's worked with PR firms, you start out with a bang and then it fizzles out pretty quickly, and that's basically what happened. So it kind of ran its course. We knew the context she had. Didn't get as much mileage out of it we thought we could basically do internally. So we have the NTLA invests, I think, $20-something thousand on our budget for PR related stuff, and so we can issue as many press releases as we can possibly write. I mean, so we could do a better job of reaching out to our membership and saying, hey, what's your story? And we need to do that. But we issue probably 15 to 20 press releases a year. A lot of it's like the tree that falls in the forest. So you may not cross your desk. But
we do ask at every convention, every symposium, we always ask all of our members, give us your positive stories. We'd like to get that out there.
Is any of that disseminated in social media?
we are basically on every social media. We're Twitter, we're Facebook, we're LinkedIn, and the answer is yes.
Okay, bigger pockets, you do anything there? I mean, where some of the investor forums are, that might be helpful too.
Yeah.
I just think I know it sounds like a jousting at a windmill, but I think we need to be ubiquitous as far as maybe it's for that period of time it wasn't working. I think we need to still put the word out there, even if like I said, it sounds like we're jousting at windmills. We still have to do. We can do it within ourselves.
Yeah, we've had this debate internally with our board, and I think we've come out on the side is we cannot sway the mass media and the world, but what we really need to protect, legislators and tax collectors. We better make sure that they understand the process a lot better. So, you know, rather than thinking that we're going to be able to combat the AARP that comes out with an article says we're against elderly. We respond to those. In fact, if anybody's interested in any of our responses, I've got them with me. I've got a response to the AARP, to Diane Sawyer, to all these publications that we've had, and some of them are pretty good responses. But we really have to make sure that legislators, because that's where we really start having problems and start changing legislation on us.
Next.
Couple things, or one thing, I guess, it's come up that a lot of people want to do away with the tax sale business and tax lien business. Are there any alternatives that are being offered that actually have traction or are taking traction that are a threat?
I mean, it comes up from year to year that they have a distaste in their mouth for whatever reason for some of the things that we talked about. But the reality is, local governments in America always need cash. None of them are really flush. So, you know, that we're aware of, I don't know of a better solution. And knowing what I know about our industry, if I'm a tax collector in America, I would do this every single day of the week and twice on Sunday. Especially in light of how many dollars that y'all are putting out there and how few liens there are in America, I would definitely do it.
Any other questions? We're good? Thank you.
Very good. Thanks so
Appreciate it.
much.